Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am very happy to see you all here tonight at the Erasmus Pavilion. My name is David Boeren and I work here at Studium Generale, where we organize all kinds of lectures, workshops, film screenings, and more for students and other interested parties. Also, this event is partly organized by the Student Wellbeing Week, as well as the Erasmus Love Lab. So an applause for them, please. Then, some house rules. Today, we're going to talk about, and maybe even see, explicit content. We want to have a productive and adult discussion about all this afterwards, of course, so I want to stress that questions should remain respectful and focus on the content of the lecture. Additionally, we are recording the event there, so you can watch it on our YouTube channel after. Therefore, it is not allowed to take pictures and make recordings during. Thank you for your understanding. Okay, so those were the announcements. We're now going to go on to the fun part, because we are going to talk about porn tonight, specifically about stereotyping in porn and how that influences people's experiences. We all know the MILFs or the slutty schoolgirls, popular cliches. Any more popular cliches? Shout them. Pizza delivery boy. give me something else. Stepbrother, I'm stuck, of course. Which we might get to that. That is not allowed legally in the United States anymore, but we'll get to that later. Any more? Who dares? The postman. Fake taxi, yeah, fake taxi. We have a knowledgeable audience here tonight, I see. I think these and more will all be discussed tonight. So here's a little timeline for you all, what we're going to do. First, we're going to dive into the research of the Porn Types project at Erasmus Love Lab with different researchers. Then we will have a short mini lecture on the data of porn in the Netherlands and beyond. And after, I will talk with two porn performers about their experiences of pornography, a real insider perspective. And finally, we have ample time for questions and discussion after all the talks. So leave your questions till the end, there's a lot of time. Then, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker tonight. She is head of the Erasmus Love Lab and someone who has been researching, sexuality for her entire academic career. And currently, she's leading the Porn Types project. Please give a warm welcome on stage for Dr. Samira van Bohemen.
Well, thank you, and welcome everyone for an unusual Tuesday night or evening, in which we're going to talk about porn. And I have some slides here, so maybe just start them. Yes, we're going to be talking about porn, and you may wonder, well, why? Why are we here talking about porn? Part of this is because we've conducted a research on Lowlands science, and when we were with the research team in Lowlands, I would sometimes joke that we were there because it's all about my dirty minds, and I just think about this topic a lot. But as you will learn tonight, or at least I hope you'll learn tonight, there's much more to it. And actually, my journey in researching pornography really didn't start with me wanting to research pornography. It started with me wanting to really research the social side of sex. And it only occurred to me later in this journey, that pornography would be a really interesting lens to research this very question of how we may be able to study the social side of sex. Well, in this journey, I was also inspired by early researchers in sexology. And these early researchers, like Alfred Kinsey and Masters and Johnson, they conducted research in the 1950s and in the 1970s. And what they did research about was really about how people's bodies respond to sexual stimuli. So they noticed differences in terms of people's heart rates, in terms of people's breathing rates, when they were confronted with sexual stimuli. But what they also noticed, these really early on sexologists, they noticed that not all bodies respond in the same way to the same sexual stimuli. And this opened up a research question about how we may explain that people respond physically differently to the same sexual stimuli. And that also opened or paved the way for my experience or my fields, the field of sociology, to explain more about sexuality. Because sexuality is very much a social phenomenon. That is going to be the main topic of tonight, how sexuality is a social phenomenon. So sexuality is steeped in various cultural norms, it is steeped in various cultural expectations, but also various power dynamics. So think, for instance, about historically shaped ideas about what is proper sexuality, and also what people can experience sexuality in what ways. So I have these examples here of the 1950s women responding to the original research that came out of the Kinsey Institute. And what these pictures will show you of these 1950s women responding is really about social norms around gender and what is considered appropriate for women and for men when it is all about engaging with a topic like sexuality. So particularly in the 1950s, it was very much expected from women that they weren't, they didn't occupy themselves with questions around sexuality. So here you see also these images of shock, which is representative of the culture at the time. And these cultural norms, these cultural ideas about what is proper sexuality for different genders, also really impacts what we find attractive. So in many cultures today, people still tend to find it more attractive if a man is sexually dominant and a woman is sexually submissive. So the 50 Shades of Grey example really exemplifies that. So many copies have been sold from this book. And basically, if you would make a Tinder account for the main characters, this is what this would look like. You have a dominant man who's very sexually expressive, and you have a more naive, submissive woman. But of course, this will not be attractive in the same way for everyone. So there may be people in this room tonight as well who maybe think, well, I enjoy it more if a woman is more sexually outgoing or is a bit more dominant than in these types of stereotypes. And what this diversity shows is that sexuality is a very complex phenomenon. And it can also feel very individual. But even our individual tastes, is my argument, are still socially shaped. And one of the first theories in sociology and in sexology who explained this is sexual scripting theory. And what sexual scripting theory argues is that our sexuality is basically scripted on the basis of certain cultural ideas, certain narratives that exist within a society about what it means to have good sex, what it means to have proper sex, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. Those are all sorts of stories that reverberate within a society and that people learn from a very young age and throughout the courses of their lives. So they're confronted with these stories. And these stories, they basically function as sort of like mental guides that guide us throughout our sexual lives. And that guide us towards the things that we're supposed to see as normal or abnormal or good or bad. But these scripts are different within different social contexts. So scripts are never uniform. There's never just one script. You have different scripts that people learn within different societies about sexuality, but also within one society, like here today, people will have been confronted throughout their lives with various sexual scripts stipulating various ideas about what it means to be sexual, for instance, or what it means to have sex as a man or to have sex as a woman. And this is what brought me to pornography. So pornography became interesting for me because it has very explicit sexual scripts. The scripts in pornography, you may argue, are even more explicit than the sexual scripts that we experience within our everyday lives. And pornography is built on all sorts of stereotypes, for instance, stereotypes around gender. And then we can, for instance, talk about the stereotype of the slutty schoolgirl, or about the bossy CEO, or the fake taxi driver that we heard, like the fake casting agent, which are all stereotypes that pertain to ideas about who is dominant in a sexual situation, like in the idea of the fake taxi driver. It is really the man who has the knowledge about what's going to happen, and then the woman is still, in this case, in this scenario, also still a little bit naive because she's not really in the know about what's going to happen in that particular storyline. So these stereotypes, they pertain to ideas about gender, and they pertain also to a power relationship between genders. And again, here too, people will not enjoy these stereotypes in similar ways. There may be some people who really enjoy these types of stereotypes, but there may also be people who don't enjoy these stereotypes. And how does that happen? What is behind that? That's really what my research is there to explore. So my research really explores how people's social environments shape their attraction to these types of stereotypes. And in doing so, in trying to research this, what my research is doing, it's trying to reconnect the social life, the social scripts that we learn, to the bodily response model that we find with the early sexologists. Because within sexology, we know that sexuality is very firmly a bio-psycho-social phenomenon. But then the question I want to answer is, well, how then does the social become embedded within the minds and within the bodies of people? All right. Before I can delve into that, it is important to know that when we feel attraction to something, and it doesn't matter whether it's sexual attraction or whether, for instance, we like a particular type of music or a particular type of food, or we really dislike a particular type of food, those types of attraction or feelings of maybe even revulsion, they can feel very automatic to people. They can feel in a way that this is not something they think about on a day-to-day basis. So this is something that colleagues of mine, sociologists who study music and music preferences, really find. That when you ask, like, yo, why do you like this type of music? People will answer, well, I don't know. I just really like it, or I just really detest this type of music. So some of the pleasures or displeasures we experience don't really happen on a very conscious level. That doesn't go for everything. So some attraction does happen on a very conscious level. And I always like the example there from people who are in a museum and they're reading the signposts. So there, if you like something, the judgment that you cast on a piece of art is much more deliberate. It's something that you think about and you take in additional information to make up your mind. The same goes basically for our sexuality, is my argument. And sociologists of culture, they explain that there are basically two cognitive processes that are involved here. And these two cognitive processes we can discuss in terms of the metaphor of the elephant and the rider, in which the rider, in this case, is much more our conscious parts of cognition. So that's our conscious reasoning. That means that if we like something, if we like a particular sexual script or a particular pornographic script, then we can basically use language to explain why we like something. We can explain it to ourselves and we can explain it to others. It is our conscious mind. But much of what happens in our everyday lives, much of how society has shaped us, does not happen on this conscious level, but happens much more on a subconscious level, which is represented here by the elephant. So the elephant represents our subconscious habits. So those are the things that we have learned within our lives that have sort of become second nature to us. These are things that we do on the basis of cultural norms, on the basis of the narratives that we've learned, but we do not think about it. We just do it. So that behavior in that sense becomes habitual. And in my research on the social shaping of sexuality, we call this the erotic habitus. These are our erotic habits that happen instantly and that are also very much connected to the way in which our bodies function. So what we will do tonight is we will share more with you about our research that we've conducted at Lowlands Science. And as you will notice throughout the night, what we did at Lowlands Science is we tried to delve into these two processes, these two types of cognitions that play a role in what we find sexually attractive. So part of the project, which is a project about people confessing about what they enjoy in pornography, the types of stereotypes they do enjoy or do not enjoy, that really taps into the writer. So that's our consciousness and the way in which we like something in a conscious way. But we also delved into the elephants. So our subconsciousness and how our social values or ideas about gender also shape ourselves and what we like on a very subconscious level and on a very physical level with our body responding to that. Well, we conducted a large research on Lowlands. We've seen so many people, we had to tell so many people, I'm sorry, we're full for this project. So we have a lot of data, and it will take some more time to really hash out all the data, but I'm very proud that we are here tonight and we can share some of the first results of this research. So yeah, let's dive in.
Thank you, Samira. Now for the elephant in the room. We're gonna look at the a video that was made at Lowlands to get a feel for what they actually did, and I hope that it will work with me. It will.
Wat zegt de porno die jij kijkt over jou? Dat onderzoeken wetenschappers van het Erasmus Love Lab op Lowlands. Hier kunnen festivalbezoekers porno kijken voor de wetenschap.
We zijn aan het kijken naar stereotypen en dan kan je bijvoorbeeld denken aan de MILF, de hitsige MILF of het sletterige schoolmeisje. En waarom mensen dat aantrekkelijk vinden en of dat verschillende mensen met verschillende sociale achtergronden dat misschien meer of minder aantrekkelijk vinden. Nou, dat onderzoeken wij op twee verschillende manieren. Het eerste dat is een biecht. Daar kunnen mensen in een biechthokje biechten tegen een pornopriester die ze niet zien, maar die ze wel kunnen horen. En dan krijgen ze 32 titels te zien van pornografische video's. Het zijn hele verschillende titels. En we vragen dan aan mensen om binnen een bepaald systeem te ranken wat ze aantrekkelijk vinden en wat ze onaantrekkelijk vinden. En die pornopriester die interviewt ze daar dan over.
Het was wel leuk. Ja, het was gewoon wel leuk. Ik had dan een gesprek over seks en over porno in een hokje met een biechtpriester. En dat heb ik nog nooit meegemaakt. Dat is wel toch een unieke ervaring om op die manier over seks te praten.
Aan de andere kant hebben we een experiment dat gaat meer over de fysieke kant van die aantrekkingskracht. Maar dan hangen we ze ook aan een hartslagmeter en dan hebben we ook een eye tracker erin zitten. En daarmee proberen we de opwinding te meten die mensen ervaren op het moment dat ze een bepaalde pornografische titel zien en op het moment dat ze een bepaald pornografisch filmpje zien.
Ik vind altijd dat er heel stereotype porno is. Ja, en hoe dat is gekomen, ik ben altijd wel interessant waar dat vandaan komt. Ja.
Is op de Erasmus Universiteit 19 november gaan we een theatervoorstelling doen samen met Studium Generale. Een Let's Talk About Seksavond. Ja, in ieder geval de eerste uitkomsten die willen we daar gaan delen met mensen. Dus zowel studenten, medewerkers van de Erasmus Universiteit en andere geïnteresseerden.
Yeah, and we are going to look at the first set of those results. And for that, I want to invite the first researcher on stage who took part in the research, who sat in the confession booth, which she tried to recreate here a little bit professorically. Please welcome on stage Lena van Lande.
Hello, thank you for this warm welcome.
I think my first question was going to be if it was awkward to interview people like this. And
No.
I think I already know the answer to that question right now.
I mean, for me, no. This was just a very fun way of really easily talking to people about their porn preferences. And I also felt like they felt more comfortable not seeing us. And it also avoided even some awkward meetups later during the festival, because we were also allowed to go to the main stages and to see the performances. So it would have been even more awkward if we would actually see our participants later that night, and then, of course, knowing what they talk to us about.
Yeah, I can imagine if you say, "Hey, MILF guy," that would not have flown at the festival. So how did people respond? Because I can imagine it's kind of awkward getting into a confessional booth and just being asked, tell me about what you like in porn.
Yeah, luckily for us, a lot of people were really enthusiastic. I think they felt safe enough at least to come to us and to confess about their porn preferences, what they liked when it comes to certain porn video titles and what they disliked. And we even talked about gendered stereotypes within these titles. But actually there was a waiting line almost every hour of the day outside. People even came back for both of our experiments, both of our researches. And I think a lot of people, they felt really safe because they were also really expressing to us even the sexual things that they did. So not even only their pornographic preferences, but also about their sexual lives. And they also learned something. A lot of people told us that they even learned something about shared patterns or themes when it comes to what they really liked within porn or what they really disliked within porn. So they even learned something from it.
Nice. And what was the aim for you guys in this specific, specific Pornfession booth?
Yeah, we wanted to know how do people assign meaning to gendered stereotypes, but also what do they like within porn, how do they choose their porn, and why specifically.
And you did that by showing them porn titles and talking about those, right? Or whether they liked them or not.
Yeah, and we're going to see a quick video to see what our respondents also saw. But yeah, we showed them 32 porn video titles, which were also really fun to create and to extract, of course, from websites, but then also tweak them a little bit. Was a fun process. And we asked them to rank those titles from most attractive to least attractive.
I think you already introed the next part perfectly. So I have a little video where we're going to look at some of these porn titles and what people said about them. Yes.
Hey, welcome to your Pornfession. On the screen you're going to see 32 porn video titles, and I would really like to know from you which titles you think are attractive to you and why. In this first step you may categorize the titles into 3 piles. Thumbs up for an attractive title, thumbs down for a title that is not attractive to you, and the question mark for the titles that you feel neutral about. Now you may drag the titles into the table.
Submissive housewife, that's good. She'll just do everything.
Cum shower, gross. Yeah, I think that the position of the woman is reduced to a receiving person when the man literally comes on her face or something.
Virgin babysitter gets cream pied. Well, anyhow, I think cream pie is pretty horny. In the virgin babysitter, that's all about being naive and new. I think that's really attractive.
To me, this is an age thing. Naughty teen schoolboy sounds very young. A few years ago, I would have liked that, but now I'm getting a little older myself. That's also less interesting.
Also, that male secretary, I like that. I imagine he then has to ask for a raise and do all kinds of sex things for it. I can picture that.
Yes, that bald male. Well, I told you, I don't have anything with bald males. And that male cleaner, I'm reminded of Mr. Clean.
Ooh, yes. Steamy passion in the kitchen leads to explosive climax. This is just nice and collective. We're collectively climaxing. That's awesome.
I'd rather watch submissive women doing dirty things than submissive men doing dirty things.
Yeah, I really don't like this. That a woman is dominant while I am very much in favor of empowered women, but apparently not in porn. Yeah, so that's actually just a wrong stereotype.
Big busty nurse, big tits, can't go wrong with that.
So those were some of the things people said to you at Lowlands. How do you respond to these? Because some of these are, as you've noticed from the audience, are quite funny. Was it difficult to have these conversations?
For us, I think no, but I think a lot of people also were a little bit nervous when they entered, and they I was also surprised by the fact that some terms within these titles, we had, for example, the sugar daddy also represented, that some people really asked what those terms meant, which is also, I guess, kind of interesting, that a lot of people, a lot of things that are on the porno websites don't make sense to most people, or to at least a group of people. But no, some they were sort of nervously laughing about them. They also found them like a little staged sometimes, the titles. They have sort of a little joke in them. For example, the female officer who needs to arrest a few men for being too sexy, that also has kind of a joke in it. So I think that was perceived as very funny.
I think I saw a sugar babe in there who was also performing at Lowlands, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one of my respondents also said something about that too. Yeah.
Funny. So it's funny to hear these responses, but what do they mean? What do they signify? What are some of the first findings based on this?
Yeah, we have many findings already, which is quite nice. We're still, of course, just putting down the details of it. We had 81 participants eventually, and what you just saw in the video is called a Q-sort, which is a systematic study of subjectivity. It's a combination of quantitative and qualitative research. I will not go into more detail than this, but it at least allowed us to sort of capture their viewpoints on these pornographic stereotypes that were within the titles, and more general also just their viewpoints on these pornographic titles. What was a very big finding, I would say, is that for the Lowlands crowd, mutual pleasure was really, really important. A lot of people told us about that they've would want both characters in the video, in the title, to experience pleasure. But we also have some subgroups, and those subgroups, they differ in how they decide on how they pick out their porn. And for example, I will give some of those factors in which the subgroups differ from each other. So for example, they differ in terms of their perspectives on gender. So for a lot of people, gender played a big role in deciding which porn they wanted to watch, and for some, just they were not using gender as sort of a selection strategy. Of course, we had a big group that was really into the more classic stereotypical power dynamic in which the man is dominant and the woman is submissive. There were also, of course, a lot of people that wanted it the other way around, or more equal. That was the biggest group. So an equal power balance between the two. But that was one of our interesting findings, that people really choose their porn based on the gender relations that are in the title. And then we also have differences in the perspective on age. And I think a lot of participants, they did something that we call age matching. So a lot of older participants, they told us that they felt really uncomfortable when it came down to titles that had like that implicitly said that the one of the actors, at least in the porno video, was a little bit young. So those were like words like teen or virgin, and the older participants felt really uncomfortable with those terms. And then it also goes the other way around. So our younger crowds, they were more into the titles that did have those words in it, because they wanted someone of their own age. They wanted to watch someone of their own age. And then, of course, there was a group of older men who really liked to see younger, more inexperienced girls. And then finally, one of our interesting findings is more about viewing porn either as a fantasy or as a reality. So there was one group that believed that porn should serve more as a fantasy, so nothing related to their own lives. So they were more into experiences beyond their own real sexual lives. So they were more into stuff like group sex, sex with porn stars, sex in unusual places, swinger parties, those type of things. And then we had a group that viewed porn more as a realistic event, something that they wanted to relate to. So they were more into romantic couples, giving massages. That was one of the most, I think, one of the most popular titles was the massage title. So they wanted porn to be a representative of their own sexual lives. So they wanted to relate to the characters. They wanted to see places where they themselves normally would also have sex.
And was that equally distributed across the two groups? For example, like that there's a specific subset of people, do they have specific characteristics why they want it to be a fantasy or why they want it to be more of a mirror of reality?
Well, not really. We could potentially connect. Our response also filled in a survey beforehand. We did not connect it to these results yet, so we cannot really say anything about their social backgrounds, if that was your question. What I found very interestingly was that there was also quite a big group of women who identified as feminists, and to their own surprise, they were also very much into the more stereotypical power balance of a dominant man versus the submissive woman. That was very interesting to me, and to themselves also a surprise.
So what's the future research on this research going to look like, or what you're going to do after? What's the next steps?
Yeah, we have multiple steps that we could take. We could connect the survey questions to also to this research, so we know more about their social background. And of course, that is something that we want to do with this porn type project as well. We want to dive into how the social background of people really shapes their sexual attraction. We could also, of course, repeat this Q-sort with another group. Of course, the Lowlands crowd is a very specific group, so we could also repeat it with another type of group, maybe older people, whatever. Or we could do it with like another stereotype, because now we only focused on gendered stereotypes, and of course there are many more stereotypes within porn. So yeah, those are a few of our options, I would say.
So there are many more porn titles to still come up with.
Definitely.
Definitely. Okay, thank you so much, Lena. Please give a round of applause for Lande. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then I'm gonna sit on the casting couch. So we talked about the interview part and the more sociological part, in the sense of the reasoning behind the like for certain stereotypes. But next up, we're going to talk about the data side, the more biological side, with a postdoctoral researcher in sociology at our university. Currently, he's working in the lab of Samira, examining these stereotypes and how they spread through mainstream pornography, but also seeing how sexual preferences are embodied and socially determined. So please welcome my next guest on the stage, Dr. Michael Rojek Giffin.
All right, thank you very much.
So, Michael.
Yes.
You did something called a Sexperiment, right?
Sexperiment, yes,
yeah,
that's
so
right.
Can you shortly explain what a Sexperiment entails?
Yeah, so that was really fun, and it was the easiest recruitment I've ever had to experience, to be honest. Can everyone hear me? Is this thing on?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So basically the goal, the question we were interested in answering, which Samira already talked about, is like the social side of sexuality. So how do sexual preferences become embodied? How do they become expressed at a physiological level? And the way we wanted to answer that with our experiment was just through a very simple physiological measurement, through heart rate. But to do this, we wanted to actually expose festival goers to different conditions that would specifically vary how stereotypical and sexual the content was. And so we had conditions that were very stereotypical in terms of there being a dominant male and a submissive woman. The inverse of that, so we called it the anti-stereotype, which would be a dominant woman and a submissive male. And then we had a vanilla category, that's what we called it, which is like a couple that seemed to be in love having what seemed to be very pleasurable sex. And then a control condition, which was just kind of clips from rom-coms, which was also very fun for me to collect and edit together.
So I think I have a little bit of the gear you used here. So walk me through it. You would get a little sticker somewhere on your collarbone, I remember correctly?
Yes, exactly. So we would, these are kind of, these stickers, these are like electrodes for the heart rate monitor. And I can't.
Yeah, you're gonna, okay, hook me up.
Yeah, I'm gonna undress him and put some electrodes on.
Yes, we're gonna put some sexy music on. No, we're not gonna make it that crazy. So for example, it would go about here?
It would go about here.
Yeah, perfect.
And then
you would hook me up to a heart monitor or CG monitor.
Right.
Perfect.
So this is kind of a portable version of what we use at Lowlands. We would clip on these little clips here.
So this
and
would
then
go
we'd be able to.
Okay, around here.
I wouldn't let you do this in the real thing, but
okay.
That's the general gist of it.
So I think we have a little video showing what the people in these conditions would see.
Right, and
we're gonna...
I'd like to set this up a little bit.
Okay, set it up.
So I'd like the audience to look for the 4 conditions, because you'll be seeing all of them. And also you'll be seeing that there's multiple phases to every trial. So first they'll see a title that describes what they're about to see. Then they're asked to rank how arousing they think they're going to find that video. So you'll also see it that they'll have a little scroller where they rank on a scale from 1 to 100, how arousing they think they're going to find it. Then they see the content, and the content's broken up into a setup and a graphic portion. So they see maybe a stepmom comes in, and it establishes the dynamic, and then they're having sex. So this is multiple phases, and we have the heart rate monitoring it the entire time. And then they rank again how arousing they find it. And so by having all these measurements, we can really determine whether it's the expectation that leads to arousal, or whether it's linked to the actual exposure to graphic content or the scenario itself. So we need to pay attention to all that when this comes on.
And maybe give us a little commentary while we're watching.
Yeah, I'll give you a running commentary
Yeah,
as well.
like we're watching sports, but it's porn.
Right.
And let's see if we can get it to work. Not yet. Yes, there we go. And we have no sound, I think, so we have commentary.
Right, so yeah, the sound is actually quite important, but that's fine. So here, who wants to take a guess what category this likely is?
It was a couple in love, guys.
Couple in love.
Yeah.
Well, the 4 categories are vanilla, stereotype or anti-stereotype.
So this is vanilla?
This is a vanilla, yeah.
Okay.
It's vanilla sex. And then you rank how aroused you are. And then on the left here, you see their heart rate. So the entire time, we're able to basically see in real time how they're responding physiologically to these different categories.
The stepmom?
The stepmom.
Anyone want to guess?
Is that vanilla to you people?
So this was the?
This is the anti-stereotype.
And that's because she's the dominant one in this video.
Right, exactly. So stereotypes often have to do with power dynamics, and so another couple in love, so we're probably going to see another vanilla scene.
You say it a little with contempt, like, this is the boring stuff.
Boy.
Yeah, we see you are in
How
love.
in love they are.
Yeah, who cares? That's not interesting for the research.
Yeah. This is the one devoid of stereotypes, so we as stereotype researchers don't really have a lot of interest in it.
Friendly small talk.
Yeah. Even more vanilla.
Or a very, I don't know where it's going after this.
And apparently very arousing. You can also see the heart rate going up. People will surprise you. And for any moviewists out there, this is actually a clip from the film Lolita, which is not a very innocent storyline, but that's just a little Easter egg I threw in to keep it interesting for myself.
Then.
Disappointed the festival goer here.
Couple in love has intimate sex once more.
And also, so what's not shown up here is that we also had an eye tracker going on. So we could measure exactly where everyone's looking. And it's a shame that we didn't do this, but we're still in the process of analyzing it. But we expect there to be, well, what do you guys expect where people are going to be looking? Yeah, me too.
Nobody wants to scream the body parts, but I think everybody knows.
It was a bit of a trap, yeah.
This is, we didn't see, but stereotypical, I assume?
Yeah, this will be stereotypical. And so...
You kind of get numb to it after a certain moment, right?
Right, so we won't see the entire duration of it, but they did have to sit here for, I think, a good 12 to 15 minutes watching these clips over and over again. Right, yeah, so they're all 8 seconds, about 3 to 4 seconds of setup, and then 3 to 4 seconds of graphic content.
And why did you keep it this short? Because I can imagine sometimes you want to get in the mood, and within 8 seconds it's quite fast.
Right, well, the main reason for it is because heart rate responds very quickly, and we wanted to get as many clips within each condition as possible, so we can average within conditions. So we had 10 clips per condition, so then we can average within them, so that if someone doesn't like the actor, doesn't like the setup or whatever, that'll get taken out when we average across the conditions.
Clear. I think we've run out of stereotypes, or not stereotypes, or videos.
Yeah.
So the question that arises is, what did you find, or what are some preliminary findings? Are stereotypes hot?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, yes. Well, what we found was, for the subjective rating, so when they just rank on the scale, everybody, both men and women, prefer the vanilla category. That's the most arousing category for everyone. And the least arousing is the anti-stereotype, for where it's the dominant woman and submissive man. And this is most pronounced for women. So women really don't like it to watch a dominant woman in porn.
And we saw this with the other research as well.
Exactly. So it's actually very consistent with Lena's findings. And then with the heart rate, what we found, we were kind of expecting there to be an acceleration of heart rate as an anticipatory arousal. What we found was there's an initial speeding up of the heart, but then when it becomes graphic, the heart rate slows down quite a lot. There's a deceleration in the heart, which is consistent with freezing behavior. So it's like a vagal nerve dilation, and it leads to like just a kind of shocked freezing. And we think it could be due to kind of a moral violation that people experience. And this is the most pronounced in the anti-stereotype condition, and the most pronounced for women. So it's kind of mirroring the subjective rating results a little bit.
So people are actually maybe a little shocked to see the anti-stereotype.
Yeah, and also in this kind of environment where they're probably not used to watching this type of content.
Fair, because did you have some funny interactions with people that had to be set up for this?
Yes.
Can you share maybe one or two?
No.
Clear. Maybe that's the best. So what are some plans for the future analysis of this data? Like where is it going to go, and what are some other things you might want to research related to this?
Yeah, so for this one, well, we're going to continue analyzing this. These are still preliminary results. We're going to expand on it, look at the eye tracking data, which is going to be, I think, quite illuminating. But for a follow-up study, same what like Lena kind of talked about earlier, is that for the next study, we want to look at sociocultural stereotypes in addition to these gender stereotypes. And so kind of replicate these findings, but with additional stereotypes to kind of get a wider gamut of how kind of social norms get under your skin a little bit.
Cool. Well, thank you for your time, and please give a warm applause once more to Dr. Michael Oyek Giffin. Then we are gonna look at some, well, numbers, because we've heard a lot, we've seen porn, we've heard it, but we're also gonna look at what most people in the world have been looking at in, well, the last years, so 2023. And who's gonna talk to that is a PhD candidate at the Erasmus Love Lab, who's currently doing research on how young people experience pornography. Please welcome on stage, Lotte Mikkers.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to... How does this work? Did I do something wrong? Oh, it works. And welcome to Pornhub Wrapped 2023. I am Lotte Mikkers, and I am here as a stand-in for my colleague Olga, who is our software engineer and data wizard and truly knows everything about data. I am a researcher, so I know enough about data to keep this presentation interesting, or at least I hope so. So let's dive in and take a quick look at the stats and trends that made 2023 unforgettable. I want to start off with a quick question. On which day of the year do people in the Netherlands watch the least porn, or at least in 2023? I would like to hear some answers. Christmas, a lot of Christmas? I heard the correct answer. Christmas was on the right track because it has to do something with festivities. But the correct answer was actually Easter Sunday. Yeah. And in 2023, viewership dropped with 12.6%. Moving on, let's take a quick look at the 5 big trends that defined 2023. We'll go through each one quickly, but I promise you they're interesting. Starting off with a little self-care, the number 5 on our list, sexual healing. Searches for therapy went up with 344%. Yes, people were looking to treat themselves in all sorts of ways. Next up, we have uniforms. Searches for soldiers, cops, and any kind of man in uniform were up with 243%. Apparently, authority was in style, and not just for straight men. Female soldier and gay soldier were popular too. Then, here's one for the tech lovers. Sex machines. Searches for androids and robots took off. It turns out that our fascination with technology goes beyond just our phones. Are we connecting with tech? Absolutely. Maybe even a little too well. Then, As a runner-up, we have supersize. Terms like big, huge, and massive were trending everywhere. If you were wondering if size matters, 2023 made it pretty clear. Yes. And then finally, our top trend. The golden age. Searches for mature content skyrocketed, and terms like MILF, DILF, and even JILF, and yes, that is what you think it is, had their moment in the spotlight. I guess it's true what they say. Like a fine wine, some things just get better with age. All right, well, let's see what the Netherlands was up to last year. As you can see here, at the top, MILF is holding a strong lead, proving that experience is in high demand. We also had some interesting movers. Indian jumped up 8 spots, while Dutch dropped with 6. And when it came to trending searches, sleepover took the lead with a 500% increase. So apparently, pajama parties aren't just for kids anymore. It's worth noting, though, that these trends aren't just random. They reflect shifts in everyday life and society. We're seeing an increased interest in technology, even in our intimate lives, as well as a growing appreciation for older generations, maybe a sign of our aging population. In many ways, porn mirrors real-world interests, giving us a unique lens on what's happening in society. And with New Year's Eve just around the corner, here's a fun stat. The Netherlands saw a 61% drop in traffic on New Year's Eve, leading the world in, well, not watching Pornhub. We can conclude that the Dutch clearly know how to throw a party. And on that note, I'll wrap up my presentation on last year's statistics. I'd like to wish you a fantastic New Year's Eve in advance, whether you're out enjoying the fireworks or cozying up with some digital company. Thank you so much for your attention, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thanks, Lotte. I guess a lot of Dutch people are more busy looking at the banging of fireworks than the banging at Pornhub on New Year's Eve. Then we're gonna talk about porn some more, but now with 2 people who understand the business inside out from a practical point of view. They are porn performers who have worked in the industry for a while, but they also appear regularly in the media to talk about their work, such as in Spuit and Slikken, and they work in the production side as well. Please welcome Lena and Marvin. So, a lot of information. Do you think these statistics we saw make sense to you according to your experience?
Yes, and I have seen them before, so that was fun to see them here on the big screen. But yes.
Yes, definitely. Marvin, what about you?
It didn't really came as a shock for me. I kind of did the research myself because I'm also really into the statistics, into knowing what to produce in the future. So I knew it.
And how do these statistics influence, well, your work?
For me, pretty much, I try to keep on track what's actual happening today, and try to kind of use that for my marketing strategy to create stuff that's maybe gonna get watched.
Clear. And what about you, Luna?
I use them a little bit less because I'm a content creator and I prefer to do the things that I'm really into.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes for keywords or hashtags, I look them up and then use the words that are trending, obviously.
Sometimes you just have to step on the trends
and
follow them. So maybe a question that a lot of people might wonder about is, how did you get started in the porn industry? Because it's a little taboo, not everybody always talks about it. So how do you get started in an industry like this?
For me, it was a little bit different, but I also think that as a woman, it's also different. The chances are there when you're starting, especially when you're new, you're fresh meat, so everybody wants to see you. But I was actually casted through Instagram. They saw my photos. I did some modeling, and they saw my photos. And a female-friendly porn production company in Berlin saw me on Instagram and was like, "Hey, you really fit the profile that we are looking for our new movie. You want to be in it?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure, I want to try."
Sure, you were like in one time, you were like, sure, why not?
Yeah, it was an all-female orgy. It was with 3 other women, and the whole crew was also female. And I was like, okay, I never did some lesbian stuff, so let's do it in a safe environment and
Fair.
get paid for it. So
Why not? And Marvin, how was it for you? I guess from the male side, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, probably is. For me, I think it started as a fantasy. I watched porn a lot, kept me really busy towards my own development in my sexuality. I watched it, and then I was trying to figure out what it would feel like if I was that person in porn. And then years later, I dared to apply on a website, and then I got casted, and then I got invited, and then I did one movie, and I did it to find out if I really liked it or not. And then I found out that I really liked it, and from there on out, I started doing it, and now I'm 10 years in, and
Still liking it.
I'm still loving it.
So maybe it's interesting to walk us through a day in life. How do you work as a porn performer? Because there's many ways you can do it. Of course, you use OnlyFans, but there's also shoots you all do. So maybe how does a day in your life look like as a porn performer?
it's really different. But for example, when you shoot for a professional porn production, the day before you fly to that country and you do your test, your STI test, of course, because you need it. And then the next morning you are gonna get picked up, or you go to the location, you go into your makeup and you shoot the photos. Depends on the production, but you shoot your photos, and that are soft photos and hard. So sex photos and safe for work photos. Then you do the dialogue, the acting, and after that the sex and the contracts, and you go back home.
Clear. So in that sense, it's similar. Like you're shooting a movie, right? It's a performance, so you're going through all those steps as well.
Yeah, and of course, I've almost forget the most important thing. You do, of course, the consent talk as well. So you discuss your boundaries and the concept of the shoot. But yeah, after that, you go home.
On most productions.
Huh?
The consent talk on most productions.
On most productions, yes.
It needs to be implemented more, I think.
Yes.
I feel like, yeah.
Yes.
It's not something that's always implemented.
No, it's not like a mandatory thing. Like every production works differently, and I think it should be normalized that like consent and things like that should be a mandatory thing in porn, instead of like you both know what you're doing, you both are professionals, you get in, you get undressed, and you do your thing. I think it should be a little bit more around than that, and there should be professionals around it too that know what they're doing present, to overlook situations instead of just a camera guy and just two performers. And then I think it's a very, how do you say that, delicate situation to deal with, because you cannot do or oversee everything yourself.
Clear. Because maybe you also work on the production side of porn, so how does it look like for you, both as a performer but also as a producer of pornography?
So yeah, I produce for the Dutch websites right now. The Dutch websites for Meid of Holland. Can I say names?
Yes, of course.
Meid of Holland, The Vuur of Vlaanderen, and Secret Circle, for the people that know that.
And I know a few of you know that.
Ooh, I've watched.
Who dares to say that they know?
Yeah, I know the statistics in the Netherlands who watch.
Statistically, some of you know, but yeah.
But the thing is, the team is really small. So it's just, most of the time, it's just me being a producer and also taking care of every other aspect of the producing of the day, except of the performing part. And yeah, it's a challenging job. Mostly I work with professionals, so it takes a little bit of the anxiety for me as a producer and as a person that has like a lot of responsibility away. Or I film like real couples that already know their own boundaries and bodies. So yeah, that's something I will do.
Clear. And for yourself as a performer, how is your experience of the porn industry, or how are your days like?
Yeah, for me as a performer, I can say a lot of positive things. I can also say a lot of negative things, but I will try to stay on the positive spectrum of the side. I did a lot of mainstream stuff. Also, I did stuff for Fake Taxi, etc. And yeah, and
Female fake
female
taxi.
Fake Taxi. I'm sorry. And eventually, I decided to kind of stay clear of the mainstream-ish pornography industry and go more in towards the more alternative pornography industry, because they tend to be more in check with consent, like and boundaries and things like that, and like you get treated as a real human being, from my personal experience, instead of it being like you're gonna get to your 9-to-5 job and someone hits a button and the factory line starts and then you clock out, something like that. That's not really something I would feel. So my personal experience is really good lately, and how it looks like it depends on the situation. It depends on where I get casted for, and yeah, I'm really selective. So I always say yes to the things I really want to do, and I'll say no definitely when I don't want to do something. So I'm never in the situation where I'm uncomfortable anymore. So, yeah.
So you are partners in porn, but also partners in life. How does that work for you? How is that combining the porn aspect of your life with your regular relationships? Is that difficult? Is it easy because you both do it?
I think this is a thing from me, right?
Is it?
Yeah. So, well...
First, maybe start how we met each other.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, I was 6 years in porn as a performer. And I was really in terms of my professionality, to not mingle or be personal with my colleagues outside of work. And then we met.
So that didn't go that well.
No, it didn't. So I threw away my standards really fast. So she walked in the room. We look at each other, and then we both thought like, okay, we're pretty much screwed, literally and figuratively right now. And then we started kissing before the camera started. So that was a really indicator that I was really unprofessional at the moment.
And me too.
And you too.
It was actually one of my first male-female scenes, sex scenes, because I did lesbian stuff and solo stuff. So I was like, oh no, I'm gonna be in love with everybody I'm with. This is awful.
Yes.
But that was not the case, because you're still together, right? Yeah.
Eventually, we started. Long story short, things happened. We started dating. For me, it was really new, because I was like I had a routine of being in porn for 6 years without having a partner that I also did the same work as I did. So it was something I had to grow into, because I really liked her, but it was a difficult situation because I had to deal with things I never dealt with. So I never really created tools for myself to know how to deal with emotions that may occur. Maybe like, even though I'm a performer and even though I have sex for work and I'm intimate without feelings, I still can feel jealousy when I'm with my partner that also do the same thing as I did. And then it made me like question myself, like, am I that hypocritical? Why can I do it and why can someone else don't do it? Why? So I started to ask myself the questions, and then we kept on communicating about it, and then we figured out, the answers of it, and then our relationship got stronger, and now we're here, and now we're really much pretty comfortable with whatever we do in this industry, so yeah.
And how was that for you?
For me, it was a little bit different, because I actually had an open relationship many years before we met. So I had some different tools, to work with the whole situation. So I could adjust quite easily, but I really want to, support you and be aware of your emotions and feelings. So we really took slow steps. So yeah, now we're here.
So sweet.
Still strong.
So this leads to a question that maybe, because you have sex for work, right? It's your job. How does it influence, well, sexuality, your own sexuality, maybe well, at home? Or I can imagine, like, yeah, I had a gangbang today. I don't really feel like, you know, kissing you tonight or doing something. How does that influence your relationship?
Yeah, I don't work a lot for productions and with other males. I do a lot of solo content, fetish content, fandom and findom content.
Can you maybe explain for the people in the audience that might not know what that is?
Okay, female domination and financial domination and all kinds of other fetishes like balloon fetish, high heel fetish, what else? Latex, small penis humiliations.
The usual, you say it like that. Maybe we won't dive in every specific example you give.
Ask for it, I deliver.
Yeah, fair. Yes. Yeah, I might have asked what is a balloon fetish, because that's the one.
That you're most curious.
Yeah.
It's actually popping and blowing up the balloons and the sounds that the balloons make. And sometimes you're naked, sometimes you're not, and I'm sitting on the balloon and blowing them up until they explode.
Like sexual ASMR videos.
I actually do that as well. Yeah,
oh, okay. We can keep going on about the list. Where was I?
Shall I mention my OnlyFans?
Sure, at the end you can subscribe. No, but I was asking the difference between porn and regular sex for you. What is that?
Yeah, but to come back at your question, I discovered a lot about myself, because when I first started with porn, I thought, oh, I'm really like a vanilla submissive girl. Actually, I wasn't, completely not. Not that I am dominant when we have sex. That's
Thanks for clarifying.
But I have two sides. My dominant side for like my creating content and with my fans, but with you we are like on the same level. But yeah, my sexuality really changed in our relationship. Like we discovered a lot. So I'm really happy with that, because I've grown so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, like I think a lot of people would create like the thought that if you were in porn and have sex that many times with people that you're not in love with, that can maybe really change your view of being intimate with your own partner and or how you look at porn. I think that's a really individual thing for everyone. Like everyone, you know, portray their own feelings differently. And for me personally, it actually made my personal sex life way better, because I could really differentiate like what I felt as a performer on set, in a moment where I had to force something out of myself, where I was like, maybe I wanted to lay down and relax, but now I have to be really active and do crazy positions for 20 minutes long. And at home I can really be myself and really express myself in my own way, and there are no people watching me, standing over me, and or saying, well, when I'm really into the moment, like, cut, let's take a break. So, yeah, it really made my personal sex life more intimate than I could imagine before I started doing porn. So it kind of elevated my personal sex life more. Maybe it sounds weird, but for me it felt like that, really. Yeah.
And maybe you touched on something interesting here, because before we heard that some people want porn to be a fantasy, right? Like something not real, like something that they can dream about, or someone wants to be realistic. How realistic should we look at porn? As you say, like there's a cut, there's lighting, there's cameras.
I think there are multiple sides, because you also have like the real amateur porn that's filmed really in the moment. They don't take care of lighting, and it's just two people or more people that are really intimate without thinking about the camera. And then you have the side of high quality productions with a script, with a crew, with different camera positions, 4K, etc. So there are different sides.
Mm-hmm.
If I could elaborate on that, sometimes when I produce for the Dutch website, I film couples. I always tell them, I'm just here to... om het vast te leggen.
To capture it.
Yes, thank you. I'm just here to capture you having sex, and you tell me how you have sex. So I let them be intimate as they can be with me present. And I also produce like very scripted scenes where things have to be taken over time after time. Maybe I have the wrong angle, and it takes hours before we get into the sex. So you have everything in porn. There's what she said, like really intimate porn, real porn, and it's called, or even a category called gonzo. That's like it's a one-taker. So you just turn on the camera and people have hardcore sex, and it's not really intimate, but it's like it's without cuts. And you have porn that's like with a lot of cuts, with a whole production team around it, like 50 people watching you having sex, etc. And yeah, it can take the fun out of it if you're not used to that.
There's all kinds of ranges.
All kinds of porn.
And maybe something that links also a little bit to the statistics and the data we've been talking about all night. So you are performers, you're on OnlyFans, you produce content yourself for different companies in the Netherlands. What works? Are stereotypes, for example, the hottest thing, or what in your experience is what people want from porn? Or your porn?
For me, it's very short. I also have my own platforms and my own OnlyFans and stuff like that. When I produce my own stuff, all my 95 of my fans are male representative, and or maybe they're straight and they have like a little bit of bi-curious fantasies, and or are homosexual fans. So my own content personally is more focused on me. So like solo videos, so that sells best for me, or like my point of view when I have sex with someone. And the videos I produce in the Netherlands should be like girl next door vibe, like not really like the amateur, like the girl next door, but more like it should be real. It shouldn't be like way too far away from their reality, too glamorous. It should be like really, approachable, and really easygoing down, straightforward. So.
And then, as you said, like a little bit amateuristically, like realistic, or a little bit stylistic as well.
Yeah, I mean, like the amateur vibe is like, it's not glamour. It shouldn't be glamour because that doesn't really sell for the Dutch platform.
Clear.
In the mainstream porn in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Clear. And as Luna, how do you look at this?
I can only speak for myself and the content that I create. But my fans love to see me in a more dominant role. Sometimes also my sex videos, but they love to see me popping balloons.
Clear. And who we also talked a little bit, like we saw the examples of the New Year's Eve, like New Year's Day, Easter. We talked about a little bit before about this, but what are the days when people are most interested? Because you really take that into account when you post something, right?
On my platforms I have different platforms, and I can see all my statistics. So usually, because I found out that it works the best for me, and it can be very different for other creators, especially in different countries, etc. Every Sunday morning I post a new video. For some reason, my fans want to jerk off every Sunday morning, so they get a new video, and then in the evenings they really want to chat. So. And
they want to chat about sexual, or sometimes just they want to chat in general?
They want to chat in general, but mostly also sexting, or I do drains. So drains are that, but with every message that I send, especially voice messages, the price goes up.
And that's the financial domination you were talking about before.
Exactly, and mostly combined with a feet fetish or latex fetish or humiliation.
Sure, you become a little bit casual towards these kind of types of sex.
Yes.
Yeah. The balloons don't shock you anymore. No.
Yeah, but I saw that on New Year's Eve, not a lot of people watch porn, but on New Year's Day, when everybody is fucked up, they do watch porn.
I think we could talk for a very long time, but looking at the time, maybe we should talk a little bit more with the scientists as well. First, a round of applause for Marvin and his team. Thank you. And then I want to call Michael and Samira back on stage to discuss a little bit more. So please give them a warm applause again as well. No, the wrong way around, sorry. There's 8 things happening at the same time, and I think my microphone is loose. I'll put it in my pocket. There's one there in the corner, on the chair, yes. And I think you need to share because we're missing one. So I can imagine there's questions, and otherwise I have many questions for you as well. But now we open the floor to you to have a discussion. My colleague Lena is walking around with a microphone. She'll come to you. I'll point you out. Show your hand if you want to ask a question. Yes, first one here, and then we'll go there and there.
Hi. So I was wondering, both of the experiments, were they only for heterosexuals? Because from the stats, we saw that there was a lot of lesbian and gay porn that was wanted. So I was wondering if that was like exclusively for heterosexuals, because I can imagine that the gender roles would be quite different.
Yeah, for sure. But we cannot research everything all at once. So this research was really designed to look at stereotypes that were about gender. So we allowed people who identified as non-binary in the research, or who identified as gay in the research. But because these numbers are very small, we didn't have enough data on them to actually compare with heterosexuals. So yeah. That's fine.
Is that something you... Michael, continue.
I could quickly add that we made it clear up front to everybody that it was going to be heterosexual content, but we invited everyone to participate, and then we also kept track of their sexual preferences so we can use it to correct statistically in our analyses.
Is it something that you might want to research in the future, or is that maybe more difficult because of a smaller population?
Yeah, and we even thought about trying to make use of Lowlands demographic because it actually has a higher proportion of non-binary or queer attendees, but it was still somewhere in the range of 10%, so not enough to, we thought, justify including it as an actual condition. But in the future, we'd definitely be interested in trying to figure out a way to do it. Yeah.
Clear. Where was I? I see one there, and then we'll go all the way up. Oh.
Sorry, was this...
No, it was here in the middle. And then we'll go up further. Just pass it along and pass it back after your question.
Yes, so my question is, how will the data results be, hoe zeg je dat?
I can translate for you if you want.
Ja, hoe wordt het verder opgepakt, zeg maar? Wat wordt ermee gebeurd?
So how will the data be picked up?
Exactly, and the second part of my question is, do you also see like risks involved with this data? Because I can imagine that certain results of this research can be used for micro-targeting people that are very vulnerable to certain stereotypes. Do you see risks in that as well?
Clear question. You can give the mic back.
So the way that we're going to disseminate the data is we're going to write it up into a scientific paper, submit it to probably a top-tier journal because it's amazing science, and it'll go through the peer review process and then hopefully be published. And the scientific community will take it up and give their judgment on it. In terms of the risks involved, I think that if anything, we're going to be dispelling some of the risks because we're illuminating phenomena that are already occurring. And so, we're empirical researchers. Porn is a fact. It's out there. And the more we understand it, I think the better that we can combat the negative aspects of it. And so that's kind of our mission as scientists. And I think that having a very well-controlled and well-thought-through design and a carefully written-up paper is going to go a long way towards kind of eliminating the taboos and kind of bringing to light some of the negative aspects. And yeah, I think making the world a much better place.
Concise answer.
Yeah, and I also think in terms of like micro-targeting, these pornography websites, they have much more data on that than we do. And they have also real researchers involved that are tracking the data, and they really don't need to learn. And yeah, probably they won't look at our research to learn for what people like, because they already know what people like. You guys probably know much better what people like, or at least your target audience is like than that we know.
Maybe maybe something about those big corporations. Do they have influence on what is shown on the porn websites like Pornhub or like the mainstream type of porn websites?
I mean, they have an algorithm, but I have no idea if there is someone behind that's pushing certain videos. I thought it was just the people that are searching for certain specific words and specific content. So I'm not sure if content is pushed purposely.
And
maybe.
Maybe. And Marvin, what do you think?
I wanted to say something, but I refrained from myself.
Okay, that's okay. We had some more questions going up. So Lena is coming to someone with a hand. Well, someone with their hand up.
Hi, my question is directed towards the lovely porn actors. I wanted to ask a more serious question, maybe more like, how do you deal with objectification of your own self and also selling your body? I understand that in society we all sell our bodies. I mean, soldiers sell their bodies to the government and workers sell their bodies to maybe corporations, but how do you specifically deal with that type of occurrence?
Good question.
Yeah, for me personally, you kind of answered your own question a little bit already. I don't really see me selling my body, if I put it like that, as a negative thing. It's not something I am. How do I say it? I'm not embarrassed about it or whatever. It's my way of life. It gives me purpose. It's something that I feel that I can express myself with, and that makes me as a whole or whatever, or complete. And and that's something that's most important for me personally, that I'm happy with what I'm doing myself. Yeah.
And I just want to add that I also see it as creating creative content. I see it as some kind of art. Maybe other people don't see it that way, but I see it that way. And that's the most important thing for me. I express myself in a sexual way that I want to see myself. So I don't really see it as selling my body. I work with my body to create my own art. And popping balloons. I just had to do it one more time.
And when it works, it works.
Power of 3.
There were many more hands. Lena, maybe go somewhere in the middle again. We'll try to get to you all, but it's kind of difficult with so many hands.
Thanks so much. I have a question because for actually both the presenters here, because when we talk about the stereotypes, and also the stereotypes is very much, even though we talk about sexuality, I'm all interested in the masculinity and femininity, in a way that how, in a sense that the different from inside perspectives or from scientific results, and how this related to this. Maybe, for example, I would imagine some people, for example, in the humiliation case, that they might feeling that's what they need, but in certain case, domination will be might be the factors they search for, the specific gender or masculinity or femininity. So I wonder this perspective, how you think about it.
Well, for sure, there's a lot of diversity. So that's also one of the things that we found, that there is a lot of diversity in terms of what people enjoy. And some people enjoy, indeed, a dominant woman and see that as feminine and attractive. And other people see a more submissive woman as feminine and attractive. So there is a lot of diversity in there. And that would be my answer. I don't know if you would like to add something.
I would say that even concepts of femininity and masculinity are to a certain extent stereotyped, and so that'll always kind of be baked into the cake, so to speak. Yeah, I got lost in that analogy. Sorry, but
But maybe as a follow-up to that question, I can imagine like there's so much individuality in preferences of people, but you're still searching for stereotypes and commonalities across them. How do you balance those differences? Because I imagine that's quite difficult, even though are some generalities.
Yeah, I would like to answer that. Yeah, because that's one of the things that fascinates me about this research and why I really wanted to conduct this research is because we oftentimes think about sexuality as a very individual affair and what we find attractive in sexuality, but also generally the people we fall in love with, we oftentimes think about this as a very individual choice. But what our research shows is that there are social patterns in that very individual choice. And that's also what we found in the Lowlands research, also in terms of how people look at masculinity and femininity and the types of values they have in terms of gender equality. It really impacted how people watched porn and if this more stereotypical porn appealed to them, also like in a physical way, which is what our Sexperiment also showed.
And maybe already like what we saw with like that older men, some older men like young women, but the most older men don't like to look at the young women, and younger men do look. So maybe it changes through time as well.
As well, yeah.
Many more hands. Lena is gonna walk. Oh, there's already someone with a microphone. Yes.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the events, for all of you. Great. I mean, it was very nice. And my question actually would like to combine indeed the two different sofa indeed. As a researcher, we see that we are doing more and more research involving stakeholders and different parties. And we indeed, I believe there is a lot of research also showing that porn, for instance, can also influence behavior, etc. Are scientists also involving indeed sex worker, performer indeed in this, and try to discuss also together the best way to actually do it, taking into account, you know, the implication that might have for people and user of porn. So there is it something that is actually happening also in the scientific part? And I would like also to ask to the performers indeed, like you work with other colleagues, and is this something that is often discussed? Is it changing a lot over time? There is still a lot to do, or it is actually getting much better? So do you have any insight into that?
Well, if I can answer for the scientific side, yes, we take it into account, particularly when we're talking about the sexual development of young people, because we know a lot of young people watch pornography and watch pornography today before they have sex. So the age of when people have sex is going up, 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 up. It's at 18 years right now in the Netherlands. And if you look at when they start watching porn, a lot of young people start to watch porn at around 12, actually. So a lot of young people have watched pornography before they actually have sex. And there are a lot of questions like how does watching pornography actually impact their sexuality and their sexual development? And that's really something we want to talk also with young people about. I think in this case it's always important to have a very nuanced approach to this. So in research about people watching pornography, young people watching pornography, yes, there are some research that shows that people will start objectifying their bodies. There's some research that shows that they will get more gender values that favor male dominance. But there's also, for every research paper on that, there's also a research paper that shows exactly the opposite. So probably the truth is somewhere in the middle, and it's very important that we also have this conversation with people. Also very important to note, what research also shows is some young people indeed watch pornography and they think, well, this is something I find pleasurable, I want to repeat. But also a lot of young people really say, well, no, pornography is fantasy and this is not something I want within my bedroom. So here too, it's very important to take this into account, but also to keep a nuanced approach to it.
Yeah, and as a performer side, a lot of performers and content creators are moved now to paywall sites. So they create content behind a paywall that you really need to be 18 for to see it. So all the free hub stuff that you see, we don't create it for young people. It's not created for them. It's not how do you call it? Sexual.
Well, it's not sexual education. Yeah.
I mean, there are some videos that are meant for that. I know that you did a project. Was it Sexpedia? Yep. That you did that was more like educational, but the content that we create is not for young people.
So it's more of a regulation question than a question about the industry itself.
Yeah, I think so. I also think it's a really challenging task you have to put on yourself, that you have to bear the burden of the influence you may have on a certain group of people. Like what as Lena said, we create things for adults, and personally I maybe is narrow-minded, but that's how I view it. It's like we create things for adults that look for certain type of content, and it's not for people that shouldn't watch it. It's like you shouldn't consume alcohol before a certain age, or it's a maybe a strange metaphor, but that's how I view it. I create it for people that should watch it, not for people that shouldn't watch it. So I'm maybe a little bit egotistical to not deal with the repercussions if people watch it that shouldn't watch it, because that's not my niche, that's not my target. I create it for people, for adults.
And you as a performer don't have influence on how it gets disseminated, unless after the paywalls where you are in full control of it yourself.
And sadly, it can get ripped. It can get published on free websites or free tube sites, whereas it should belong behind a paywall because it was constructed in that way. But you cannot never have the influence if people download something and put it somewhere freely, because it's against copyright rules, but they still do it.
Yeah, and I think we create content or work for productions that we all have signed a consent form for. We were there because we wanted to be there and wanted to do that kind of a job. And that now in 2020 through 2023 and this year, I know that Pornhub is way more stricter in that. They try not to upload illegal content and stuff like that. So hopefully it will get even better in the future. But yeah, we are not responsible for the people that watch our content. I mean, they choose to watch it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If I may just follow up, I didn't mean
Wait, sorry.
things, but for example, there is growing attention also about showing the consent. The actor indeed are people who are performing, for example. So there are those kind of messages also in the content. So my question was like, is this something, an ongoing discussion that is going to lead somewhere? So I wasn't really talking about banning someone or taking care of underage people, but for instance, showing what also you mentioned at the beginning, consent is very important. You are professional, for example, so you are doing this, and those kind of things that maybe 20 years ago were not there. So
I think the industry is changing a lot, because we saw a lot of very straightforward male gaze porn where things weren't discussed, things were just done in the scene, and we never had the verbal or body language in terms of consent in the video itself. Personally, what I experience when I'm working for productions, I'm always working for productions that enforce people giving and asking for consent while in screen in the movie, and they keep it in the movie because it's an important thing for people to see, because it's normal, because you should ask your partner in the bedroom, is it okay if I do something like this, if you don't know? And when I produce movies myself, I'm also always, I start with a consent talk, obviously, but I'm also leaving those kind of things in the movie. When someone asks for lube or whatever, and maybe it looks ugly, if someone grabs a bottle of lube and put it on their hand, I'll leave that in, because for me, it should be something that should be portrayed as a normal thing to do, to do something, out of the ordinary. It should be not out of the ordinary, it should be the ordinary thing. Does it answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe not only the consent talk, but also the aftercare is also important. Like maybe a little talk or a cuddle or some laughs or sharing stuff.
Many more hands were here. Is there? Yeah, we go down slowly again.
Okay, so it's a question for the couple. Everything you guys said sounds quite positive, so you seem to have like a really positive experience, and I was wondering if that's like the norm, because from what I've heard, sex work is often like related to really negative stories, especially like with a lack of consent and like a lot of things going wrong, and like people even draw like connections to prostitution, which is quite different, but you know, so it's like perceived as very negative, and you're saying a lot of positive things. And I was wondering if it's like really as positive as you're saying, or if you still think it's largely a problematic sort of thing, and like specifically what you think, like which problems still exist in the industry.
There are still problems, and they're kind of big problems. We did not, yeah, I mean, your experience was different than mine, of course, but I always did research for who I'm gonna work with, who is the performer. I did my research. So I did not step into the project like knowing nothing and being on the set and then had to do like double anal or stuff like that. But I did not want to do that. So I never had experience like that. I went to productions and worked for people that I really liked and were really kind. But I've heard some experience from my colleagues that were not good. And especially, I don't want to categorize a certain group, but especially the young girls that are 18 to 21 that don't know the English language really well and come from a country that, you know, they don't have a good educational system or stuff like that, and those girls are targeted the most, or I would say not like abused, yeah, maybe abused, used. So that's something that really needs to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sad part about people having power is that they also know when and how they can exploit something, and that's a sad thing. Personally, when I started, I was a little bit naive. I said yes to everything. I learned the hard way. I've been in a lot of situations where I wasn't really comfortable with. So as I said, I learned the hard way. So I set clear boundaries for myself, what I want to do and what I didn't want to do. And I kind of took that with me when I started producing, it's really important for me that I try to create a really safe environment for my performers, and that's something I would put before my own personal preferences. Like, it's really important for me, and I think in this country things happened, but things are getting way better, also because I'm producing. And that's something I'm really proud of, and I know what happens. I know a lot of people, and that's the reason for me personally I stay clear from mainstream productions, because of the factory button that gets turned on and turned off, and of a lot of steps they maybe tend to forget to take because you're working with people with feelings and emotions. But sadly it's still something I cannot really directly change, and I'm thinking about ways how to maybe indirectly change it in the future. I don't know.
I mean, nowadays, a lot of people really open their mouth or put stuff on social media. So I'm so happy with that people speak out, because a couple of years ago, nobody opened their mouth in Europe. In the USA, yes. All performers, you know, they tell when something is wrong, but in Europe, for some reason, nobody talked, but now we do. And I think also performers talk more, you know, with each other. So there is some...
Yeah, they started to create WhatsApp groups with all the performers with each other, and then they had a space where they felt that they can share their negative experiences, to warn people to not get in bed with these kind of people, etc. So there is a layer that can maybe prevent stuff from happening, but things still happens. And that's something I'm thinking about every day, how to create like a weapon to neutralize it.
Lena's upstairs, and then we'll go down this side.
Okay, I have a question for Marvin and Luna. It's more of a personal question, I suppose, so you don't have to answer it. How does your family react to your career? How does your professional life interact with your personal life?
We get this question a lot. I will answer. So my family is really open-minded. I mean, we talked during dinner about sex. I always could, you know, ask everything to my parents. When I told them, hey, mom and dad, by the way, I'm doing porn. Yeah, my father was first like, what? What are you doing? So I explained to him and I talked to him. And then he was like, okay, if you really thought about it and you're happy and you're safe, please think about the things that you're doing, then it's fine. If you're happy, then I'm happy too. Yeah, my mom, she's even more relaxed. She's like, okay, girl, do your thing. My whole family knows, my everybody. And they are like, hey, how's your work going, S? I'm like, okay, it's good. Oh, did you make some cool movies? Yes, okay. So, yeah.
Maybe an extent to that, Samira and Michael, how do people respond if you say that you're researching porn?
Oh, in a similar way. Yeah, a lot of people, somehow it resonates with a lot of people, at least within my environments. So indeed, my family, but also like my neighbors here today. So I think a lot of people, because pornography is so popular and it's a taboo subject, but a lot of people know that there are a lot of stereotypes in pornography, and they know that these stereotypes also pertain to social inequalities. For instance, social inequalities between men and women, and they think it's interesting to do research on that. So yeah, a lot of people, in terms of like an academic discussion about that, they enjoy having that discussion. I don't know about you.
Yeah, well, my parents are very supportive. But when I told my mom, who's a very devout Catholic woman, that I was like, oh, I got this great new job. Mom, I'm researching pornography. She fought so hard to put a smile on her face. She's like, oh, honey, that's great. And then when I went home and like told my sisters about it, like, how do you love my new job? I'm working with porn. Like, what? Mom didn't tell us that. So she did her best to kind of talk around it to all her church friends and my sisters. But they're very proud, I think.
He works in the Netherlands. Yeah, it's really nice. That's what they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Another question. Yes.
I have a question for the researchers. I was just wondering, you said that you also did research on the social backgrounds of the participants, and that you kind of want to use that to like draw larger conclusions about stuff. How did you correct for correlation not exactly being the same as causation? Because like that could be a problem. And also, how aware are you of the fact that porn and sexuality in general is viewed by society as such a taboo thing? There are so many ideological actors, from like religious communities to politicians, but also from, for example, feminist organizations, that can kind of, they can use your research to create larger narratives about specific groups of people, specific genders, specific whatever. How aware are you of that issue, and how do you correct for that in your work?
Great question.
I think I'll start, then pass it to Samira. So I think I'll take it in reverse order. So how do we concern ourselves with it being taken by bad actors? That whatever we find out about particular groups, how is this maybe going to be misused by particular ideological factions? I think that the way around that is, A, to research it very carefully and then write up about it very carefully in a very nuanced way. But whatever we find, I think we're kind of duty-bound as empirical researchers to actually present to the scientific community. And ignoring something that we find as an empirical fact or a empirical trend doesn't do anybody any favors. And I think Samira will maybe expand on this in a second, but to your first point about conflating correlation with causation, we don't correct for this conflation, but we are aware of it. So we'll be presenting all the correlations that we find just as such, as correlations. And you're completely right in pointing out that correlation does not equal causation, but that doesn't mean that correlations are meaningless or that they can't tell us anything. And so as long as we're aware of this distinction, then I think we can actually learn a lot from our data.
Yeah, indeed. And yeah, when it comes to also Michael's research, we also control for that, right? So we're going to control for that. So yeah, right now we're focusing on the correlation between certain gender values that people have and how they physiologically react to certain porn. And we see that there are differences between people that we can explain theoretically. So they correspond with what we would theoretically assume. And then you may be able to ask, well, maybe it's that people watch a lot of porn, maybe they become more conservative than if they watch a lot of stereotypical porn. But that's also something that we can control for in our data. So that's, and with regards to research been taken up for political aims, I often stress around this project, we don't have a political agenda. We don't have, of course, if we have an agenda, it's about producing more equality. So it's about producing more gender equality. It's about producing, a society that's less, has less prejudice when it comes, for instance, about race and ethnicity. So you can say, well, that's an agenda. But it's not, we're not tied to any political agenda other than that. Yeah, and the fact that we're just scientists doing fundamental research, which we love. Yeah.
Lena's up there for a question. And then we'll stay there for a bit and see how much time we have left.
So first of all, I want to thank Marvin and Luna for your participation in the Juris documentary. I loved it. I found it very informational and also just fun.
Juris?
Yeah, like from
Spuiten, slikken. Yeah.
Yeah. And second, now we see pornography. Everybody looks at it and watches it, and it gets consumed a lot. But I think this is one of the first researches of research papers that's actually about the fundamentals behind it. Do you think opening up the conversation like this helps reduce the stereotype, and will there ever be a time when we can all just look at it for what it is, that we look at porn and that there's nothing really taboo about this? So I think this question is aimed at both the researchers and the performers. So yeah.
Good question. Yeah, good question. If it will help if we keep talking about it, I think the only way to find out is to keep talking about it. Yeah, and push through and make people change and see porn differently. And I think the mainstream of porn should be the more romantical type of porn that's more real instead of the more hardcore stuff. But that's my personal opinion.
Well, I think that I agree to a large extent that the more we talk about it, the more we reduce the kind of taboo surrounding it. But I think that as long as there's differences between people and differences between cultures, there's always going to be taboos. And part of taboos can also be part of the mystery and what's attractive about certain types of porn. So I think that that's kind of always going to be there, but we can at least reduce the shame and the stigma surrounding it.
More questions. We'll go here, and then we'll go here, because you've been holding your hand for a very long time.
Okay, first of all, thank you for coming. So this is for the researchers. For the Lowlands project, in terms of cardiovascular activity, how did you control for drug use?
Yeah, we encouraged it. No, we did have a screening beforehand where we asked them what they'd taken that day. We had a breathalyzer when we were in doubt about it, and if they seemed like they were kind of having too good of a time, then they weren't allowed to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Question here, and it might be our last one. We'll see. In the front, yes.
I have a question for the performers. So first of all, thank you for the speakers. I read something recently about how ethical porn can only exist behind a paywall. Is that what you believe in? Do you think all good porn, I guess, should be paid for?
It's
a difficult question.
Difficult. There are many people that believe that the performers give you consent to watch what they're doing when you're paid for it. It's a difficult thing. It really is. I think personally the most ethical thing you can do to consume porn, especially in this era, is to subscribe on your personal porn performer that you want to watch, and I think that's the most ethical thing, because then you give the money to the person that should earn it the most instead of a production. And yeah, that's the only thing I can say about it, because it's a question I don't want to dig into deep.
Luna, how do you look at that?
The same. It's a difficult question. But I think indeed what Marvin says, the most ethical way is to support the creator itself. But yeah, if you really like, for example, videos from a certain kind of production and they have their own website, you can also subscribe to that website, of course.
And I also think it never hurts to put in a little bit of research in what kind of porn you are consuming, like what kind of production are they, what are their beliefs in consent or in porn themselves, and then if you know what kind of porn you're consuming and you believe it's an ethical way of consuming porn, I think it's a good step to take before you consume it.
Clear. Okay, last question right here, and then we'll close it up.
Hey, this question is for the researchers. So I wonder, I mean, Samira, you talked a bit in the beginning about like questioning these like sociological norms that we have that are kind of deeply ingrained. And I think going back to the research that you found, like some feminists were a bit like kind of shocked that they were interested in the power dynamic. I wonder to what degree, it's kind of an open question, I guess, for anybody on the floor, but to what degree should we question these stereotypes and actually act on them, or should we separate our sexuality and is it just about like reflecting on them and say, okay, they exist and that's fine and I can still act on them, or is it a matter of trying to change them?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like for me, I think it's always important, that people can be free in their sexuality and do not have to feel ashamed. So if you're a feminist and you still enjoy watching pornography where the man is more dominant and the woman is more submissive, I mean, and you consider that a fantasy, yeah, there's it's important to know there's nothing wrong with you. I mean, it's perfectly fine, and so. But there is always the other side, and that is that, of course, these fantasies also still reproduce social inequalities, and it is important to be also aware of that. So I think this being aware of it can already do something in terms of changing how people may look at this. But yeah, we don't have to shame everyone who's watching pornography or enjoy something in a very individual setting if it's created by people who've consented to it. We don't have to shame people also for enjoying that. Yeah.
Marvin and Luna, what do you think about this question?
Do you want to say something about it?
No, she covered it. No answer. That's fine. I think we've had enough questions. You've been sitting here for over an hour. That's it for today. I want to thank the Erasmus Love Lab for co-organizing with this, the Student Wellbeing Week as well. And before you all go, I want you to give a warm applause to all of our guests here tonight. Thank you.